folks, this is Bob from BBD, news with geopolitical views. Lots of stuff that's happened over the last 10 days, which is probably impacting India's geopolitical well-being, and most of the events that have basically happened, as long as we keep a hawk eye on it, have been kind of advantageous to India. What are the stuff that's happened? China, basically, China and India disengaged in the Ladakh area. Important. The second was the Biden administration has put the Saudis under a pressure pump. You all know about the Myanmar flux. Again, this is something that's working. Both the Saudis being put under the pump and Myanmar in a flux of probably giving the heebie-jeebies to China. Then Nepal, that's another big one of the pearls that seems to be falling apart as long India plays its cards right. And then you have the big one that came out as surprises yesterday is the ceasefire on the line of control, which has been so active and having so much damage on both ends in the year 2020. Interesting points. But let's see what led and what's happening all over the place. You see, Claude RP writes, a reason to disengage. India's firmness, Xi political goals explain China's withdrawal in Ladakh. What does he have to say? Because he's a learned man. He knows this area. He says, made the communist co-leader lose face further. What's happening there is making his lose face further. Before we go into change of mind of Chinese leaders, it is important to understand the political background in the Middle Kingdom. He says, crisis. India has found a reliable and unwavering support from abroad, particularly from Washington and France. This is also a factor that made Xi think twice before continuing the confrontation in Ladakh. Then, the resilience and the innate strength of the Indian Jawan, who adapted far better than the Chinese counterpart to the climatic hardships, must have shocked the Chinese leadership. Then, another shock for Beijing has been that the Indian army has been deputed through the commander of the Leh-based 14 Corps to conduct the negotiations. This is the first in post-independence India. For most foreign service officers, negotiation is the art of compromise. A soldier knows far better than a diplomat how a few hundred meters in a mountainous area can be vital. And this really has been. And here is one place that I find that this particular dispensation and Prime Minister Modi has really upped the ante against China and done the right thing. And that's why we actually have reached this particular situation. Because let me believe it, if we had left it up to the MEA, we would have negotiated our land away, right? And what does Pranab Dhal Samta write? He says the differential calculus. He says, but if anything, the 9-month-long standoff has put the spotlight back on the one issue India has always tried to deal from the shadows, the China threat. India overlooked the fact that China saw things differently. For Beijing, the strategic priority was to build a power differential in the relationship and enlarge it over a period of time. In India's case, China has pursued this objective through 4 key fronts: boundary dispute, terrorism, nuclear proliferation, and economic coercion. The big front was India was through its all-weather ally Pakistan. Beijing has supported the Pakistani military and its deep state in waging cross-border terrorism on India. This is amazing. People are acknowledging that. Nuclear weapons is another area where China, despite being a member of the NPT, has helped Pakistan. India came out looking better on both occasions in the process. Chinese insecurity came to the fore. China's desire to dominate, it appears, is only matched by its unstated insecurity at being isolated. Worse, from China's standpoint, the last 9 months have helped give the loosely held Quad a larger purpose. And if he thought that the Joe Biden presidency in Washington would be ameliorative to the Chinese perspective, those doubts were raised when the new team in Washington made it a point to make the Quad foreign ministers meeting its first multilateral pit stop. And that's the important thing to note. And France and India, France to hold naval drills in April when the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier strike force will conduct exercises with INS Vikramaditya in 2 phases in the Arabian Sea. France and India have another kind of bonding, at least with this government. France's National Assembly passes bill aimed at curbing Islamism. Important. And The other pressure point that is building from the Biden side is on Taiwan, and as C. Raja Mohan writes, the Taiwan flashpoint. China from trying to occupy, basically it says that a silicon shield protects Taiwan from China was first articulated by journalist Craig Anderson. He says Taiwan's dominance in the production of semiconductors deters China from trying to occupy the island. On the face of it, China's enormous military power can easily crush Taiwan's independent existence, but the collapse of Taipei's semiconductor industry will pose a major economic and national security threat to the US. So Taiwan, neither side, these guys can't get there, and US won't let China get to Taiwan because of semiconductors, folks. What do we say? Long way to go for full LAC de-escalation army chief. So he's got it right. He says, we will trust, but we will also verify. I think Chief Nirvana has got it right. He sees through the Chinese. But more importantly, but Nirvana should change this. He says, we will not trust, but we will also verify. Beijing on diplomatic charge amid pullback. China says it lost 4 soldiers and Galwan leaks selective clips showing as if India was the aggressor. Jai Shankar, Wong review Pangong disgrace. It's an article, but the part that I find very, very, very interesting is held talks on Moscow Pact, says EAF. As per the Moscow understanding, the Indian side clearly conveyed that it expected full adherence to all agreements on management of border areas and would not countenance any attempt to change that. That's really funny. I personally don't trust Russia and I don't trust China. Anything that happens in the USSR and Russia has got to do with the national interest of Russia. So at this time, their focus and force this is because of their problems that they're having with the United States. That doesn't work for India. And India has to be very clear about that, folks. Anything that happens in Russia really, really needs to be watched like a hawk. Continuing a little bit on Russia, on AET's query last month, Sergei Lavrov had said that Russia is doing utmost for establishing peace and tranquility between India and China, and in the context referred to the utility of RIC. As far as Russia is concerned, I can understand them trying to wanting to embed themselves. But why is India? Why is India allowing third-party intervention? We've never done that before. Russia is trying to get a power status. We don't want to do that, right? We had another one. Shringla headed to Moscow as India re-engages old ally. Re-engages. Remember that. Russia has been a vocal opponent of the Indo-Pacific and Quad, which was put it at odds with New Delhi. But in a perceptible step back, Russia Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov told a press conference in January, I know that India is not going to move this Indo-Pacific cooperation in a way which would be not positive and constructive. Well, they've accepted it. But India have got to put, not to worry about Russia, not to worry about China. Quad is India's main bargaining chip going into the future and its main security anchor. We got to remember that. Things are not really good for Putin at home. Putin misjudges his greatest. The mass protests triggered by the arrest of Alexei Navalny show the president's dark arts are failing him. Absolutely are. But remember, while I keep saying things that Russia is not what it's supposed to be, and it's definitely not what this is, right? India-Russia strategic partnership is special and privileged. I hardly think that, India has also come in and said India welcomes extension of US-Russia pact, but what we can't obviously do away with. Finally, world powers, particularly those engaging with India and the Indo-Pacific, must know that a multipolar Euro-Asian supercontinent is not possible without Russia. Preventing the emergence of a hegemon in Eurasia without Russia, given its size and resources, is well nigh impossible. So this is the important part for India to note. And here's the other part for India to note. Talks with Pak only on Afghanistan won't hurt India ties Russia. I think it will. Russia's suspicions about the Indo-Pacific run deep. That's true. But obviously he's countering with Chennai, Vladivostok shipping lines is already an example that's important. And while the government is confident Russia will remain mindful of India's interests, it's also closely watching Moscow's exchanges with Pakistan on developments in Afghanistan. Folks, like I said, Russia has just got its own axe to grind. Let's not be one of the collateral damages that Russia has been doing on India all these years and has kept us subservient, undeveloped, underdeveloped, especially in the defense industry. Folks, obviously, what's happening with the latest policy statement that's coming out of Washington, there's a lot of flux in the region, hammer on Saudi Arabia, China, a lot of the pullback. In terms of disengagement has had to do with that. A lot of pressure on them in Taiwan, a lot of pressure that's about to come on them on human rights. So I think, and then the other stuff that's happening is obviously what's happening in Nepal. It's a blow to Oli as Nepal top court reinstates dissolved house. It's not only a blow to Oli, it's also a blow to China, and China is swimming against the tide. And here's important note: where Nepali and Indian interests meet, important part for India and Nepal is we have to stay, or at least seem to be not interfering. Let this be something that the people decide. The blame for what is happening in the politics in Nepal must be now rest squarely on China, and that's the message, that's the news that should be sent out to the people of Nepal. Okay. And similarly, what's happening in Myanmar is also going to complicate things for China. It's felt that a lot of people think that this takeover by the army is pro China, but it's absolutely not. The people who are actually against China, more so than Aung San Suu Kyi, has been the Janta. So this is something that you should have to keep in mind. China at this stage and India should project this to the rest of the world. And I'm told a lot of the world is now coming back to talk to the Janta. That's important. Now, why is Pakistan all of a sudden, or why do we have this? India, Pak agree to LOC ceasefire. DGMOs hold talks on hotline. Ceasefire pact. First thaw in deep India-Pakistan chill. Back channel open for 3 months. Back channel talks lead to thaw. And that led to India allowing use of its airspace for Pakistan PM special flight to Lanka. Pakistan also realizes it has an opening with the Biden administration because of Biden's soft corner towards Pakistan. Not only that, they know that they've also figured out that the United States at this point of time is now the principal enemy is China, and they know that India is in their court, but they also want Pakistan in their court. So now this is an attempt, and that's also a statement that came out yesterday in Washington, which clearly said that the Kashmir issue should be resolved by the two directly. So they're playing both sides of the game. Okay, crucial question: why this sudden bohemi by Avinash Mohani? The answer can be found in the first foreign policy statement of Joe Biden, the president at the headquarters of the State Department on February 2021, countering the growing ambitions of China to rival the United States and determination of Russia to damage and disrupt our democracy were listed by him as the two major challenges that the diplomats of the country will have to face. As you can see, the change in policy stance taken by Biden has forced both China and Pakistan to come to the table. That's been one of the key reasons. Here now, Pakistan trying to use that window available to them has now started pretending it's a peacenik. And I think by now, the constant badgering by Jaishankar about terrorism is more or less has gone by sell by date. He should come up with a new policy. But here, what is Imran up to? India on lips. Imran projects peacenik image in Sri Lanka, but Pakistan stays on grey list under increased monitoring. FATF, great stuff. Sri Lanka also is some kind of trouble still. Sri Lanka at the UN Rights Council, another test for India. India has to play balance between domestic politics and Sri Lanka. But here one thing is very clear. Sri Lanka is not on our side. We got to stop helping them up, folks. We got to let them be and let them go. And he says, Pakistan seeks to enhance ties with Lanka via CPEC. India, seeing that, is already countering with Bangladesh. India made software helps Bangladesh translate court rulings into Bangla. Jaishankar gifts 1 lakh vaccine, says relations poised for quantum jump. That's with Maldives. Not only that, India extends 50 million line of credit to Maldives for defense projects. Then on to Mauritius. Jaishankar is in Mauritius, even though there is some unrest. India to supply defense equipment to Mauritius under 100 million letter of credit. India inks FTA with Mauritius, the first with an African nation. This is counter to Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is not that important, folks. Jai Hind.